you're impossible to stop.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
What truth?
That you are a slave, Neo.
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. People.
Exactly.
I think of Bitcoin the same way I think about the early internet. I think they didn't see it coming, and now it's a viable form of currency. You can actually buy things with it, and I think the government is freaking out.
I'm pleased to announce that we are launching the Justice Department's first ever Office of Environmental Justice to oversee and help guide the Justice Department's wide-ranging environmental justice efforts.
There is no climate crisis at all, and there is actually a climate renaissance right now. So the idea that 3 degrees more Fahrenheit is going to be this disaster, this is just cherry picking, this is anecdotes, it's not looking at the big picture. The big picture is clear that net zero is mass impoverishment and mass premature death.
You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
Welcome to Toxic Airwaves. OBS quit on me twice. I guess third time's the charm. We got the stream up running. Hopefully. It's a mess. Technology's a mess. The world is going crazy, and Bitcoin's down big. All the shit coins are down, which is the consolation. You get cheaper sats, and you get to watch the shit coiners, and all the fiat brained influencers out there lose their shit. And that's always fantastic to watch. It's a great consolation. But yeah, I titled tonight's show Reject Humiliation and Gaslighting. And I was inspired by Simply Bitcoin this morning. They had this great little segment where they were talking about, the Ministry of Truth and the propaganda. What they are in espousing things that are so far from reality is it's just a demoralization campaign of just humiliating people, like putting information out there that is so far from reality, and really beating it down people's throats. And we just have to reject it. And I think, this is something that I've been on for a while as I've kind of gone down my, Bitcoin, anarchism, libertarianism rabbit hole, is just kind of withdrawing from a lot of the bullshit. The media that I consume changes. I'm just a lot less interested in seeing the propaganda in TV shows. Commercials drive me nuts, stuff like that, where I just have lost taste for a lot of the bullshit. And I think that's the only thing that we have to do, or we can do at this point. And I kind of, am questioning, is it really like a productive thing to go out and try and ratio these people, because they know what they're doing. They're espousing there's a few lemmings that are so bought into it, but they're espousing these things that are so far from reality, just to beat you down and beat you over the head with it. And it is, it's, just giving it attention and feeding into it kind of feels it. Whereas, if we can start operating, on our own in creating this parallel economy, this parallel society, without them, and just continue to promote their irrelevance, I think that that's going to be more productive in the long run. There's definitely a lot to it, a lot to think there, and there's a place for everything. There are people out there that are on the fence that need to hear this stuff. But again, if you're not awake at this point, then, what is going to wake you up? We're pretty deep down this. And, I had Alex Epstein's, he's one of my favorites, but he was talking about this move to net zero is just anti-human. And, it's being used to really target Bitcoin mining. And I think part of the reason why Bitcoin mining is in the spotlight is because it is so, vehemently against this bullshit. It's about consuming energy. It incentivizes, humans to consume more energy. When you start mining Bitcoin, you're looking for the cheapest kilowatt hour possible. You're looking for stable electricity. And, people are very industrious in finding it. And that's why they're going after it. And so, I was in a space on Friday with listening to Dennis Porter and a bunch of yahoos talk about, the importance of lobbying these people. And these people don't give a shit. And so playing along with them, I think, is very counterproductive. And it's just not entering into a good faith argument. Like, at the end of the day, there's nothing that's going to get us out of here but a battle. Like, they're taking the war to us, and we have to have this mindset of, these people are evil. They're psychopaths. They want human suffering and destruction. If they get away with their policies, they're going to get human suffering and destruction. You just look at all of their policies over the past 2 years and prior. That Rand Paul clip, if you go back and watch the whole thing, he talks about the Pentagon Papers, outlining the Vietnam War, weapons of mass destruction, all of these things that the U.S. government spread as or disinformation or whatever, that has had horrible human tolls. Absolutely horrible. Millions of people have died as a result of government, quote unquote, misinformation. Part of it, large part of it, just violent deaths, bombing civilians, stuff like that. And a large part of it also has to do with just economic destruction that they've caused with their policies, and going and colonizing these countries. And it's just evil. And so, when we enter into a conversation with them, and try to enter into it with good faith, with anything other than calling them satanic pedophiles, which they are, I think we're giving them legitimacy. And, it's like, why does the corporate media still have power? It's because everybody goes and freaks out at the things that they say. And then now that's a discussion point. And when we leave that discussion and start having our own discussion on the side, I think that's when things, begin to shift, and a narrative starts forming, and communication channels that are actually productive start forming. And so all of this, Bitcoin culture that's being created is absolutely fantastic. But I think I tend to lean in this direction just because it's not great for my mental health to just look at this insanity. Like, and I don't want to subject myself to their bullshit. I don't want to subject myself to their propaganda. And yeah. But yeah. How you doing tonight, Hobo? Yeah, Hobo. Where you at? All right. I'll keep on ranting. Probably going to keep this episode short tonight. I am going out to Nashville tomorrow to the Bitcoin miners meetup. I'm pretty stoked about that. It's going to be a good time. Like, one of the narratives that I've seen creeping into the Bitcoin mining world is, all this ESG bullshit of, like, you need to comply with the ESG and whatever to get funding and stuff like that. And I kind of get that perspective because that's where all the money is. But, it's the same thing as just like entering into your own subjugation and destruction. It's non-productive, and it's antithetical to Bitcoin. And what I see happening is this massive pushback of, some pretty awesome people like Max. I always forget how to say his last name. Gigliardi, something like that, and Steve Barber, and Alex Epstein's getting roped into the scene, and Marty Bent. These people that understand what's happening, and it's awesome. A lot of those people are going to be there in Nashville, and I'm excited to see that. Okay, Zorn says, I tried listening to what Bitcoin did in Absolute Freedom with John Seth. John Seth was making the argument that coercion was necessary. What the fuck is wrong with these people? Yeah, I mean, if you look around you, you know, people are kind of crazy right now and they're kind of spun up. And I think, you know, unfortunately, the argument for coercion, you know, really rings well with people when they look around them and they see people acting wild and out of control and doing things that are perceived to them as, you know, threatening and absolutely insane. And, you know, the reality of why we're in these situations is because of the coercion in the first place. And coercion is definitely not necessary, you know, for a functioning society, and is arguably, you know, what creates a dysfunctional society. You know, this government state control creates so much destruction and places people in bad situations. You know, when people make arguments like that coercion is necessary, you just have to lay out, you know, all of the terrible things that the state has done, which is incredibly easy to list off. And, you know, the scale of the evil things that they've done. Zarn says, first time I heard a colored guy argue plural slavery. Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to put it. A lot of people just don't understand what the world looks like without the state. I had a long argument with a friend that is a healthcare professional about free markets and healthcare and how beneficial that would be, you know, and that's essentially like what we're working with in these arguments against statism essentially is we're working against years and years and years of indoctrination. And it truly is this, what's the word? Stockholm syndrome, you know, where they really learn to love their captors. And part of that is done just through the trauma. And I think it's fair to say that the population is incredibly traumatized as a result of the state. Public schooling is incredibly destructive, as well as just, you know, all the awful things that are happening right now. Somebody just threw something up in the nest and it distracted me.
Sorry.
No worries, Hobo. Glad you're there. But yeah, the majority of the population has that frame of reference. And I think the thing is, you know, that's hard to break to them is, you know, no way does coercion offer them safety at the end of the day. And it's a very simple, like logical, you know, answer as to why is like the coercers are supposed to protect you from the bad people, but the coercers always end up being the bad people that the coercers were supposed to protect you from. And that's the argument at the end of the day. And living in a voluntary society, it just hasn't been taught. There aren't examples being put forward to people, and so it's such a wild, strange, alien idea to them. And I think, you know, from a beneficial standpoint, is like we can begin to live in I think action and actively pursuing to create these voluntary societies that are alternatives, as an example, is a solution. You know, looking for ways to actually engage in free markets, you know, explain to people why this stuff is dumb. Looking for ways to really like break down, you know, the narrative of them understanding that it's stupid. Like, how many people have bought weed? Weed has been illegal for forever. Are you being protected in them making it illegal? No, that doesn't make any sense. So what about all of the other things? All the things in markets, you know, and Mises and Hayek and, you know, all of these Rothbard, all of these guys had, you know, these awesome theories on free markets. And we have a chance to really take that and put that into practice today. And that's what's so powerful about what Ross Ulbricht did and why that's such a great argument, you know, pointing to the Silk Road and these things of like, no, coercion is not necessary. It's far more safe to, do these things. But I think at the end of the day, like, again, I just don't know how much time, like, there's going to be people that are on the fence and people that are honestly, considering these things, but there's going to be a lot of people like Peter McCormick that are not good, having good faith arguments on this stuff, or conversations that are, always wanting to steer it in the direction of statism, which is, a total shitcoin. I'll hang out with minarchists and, talk with, people that like believe in human liberty, but it really bothers me when somebody's like, we need to support the boot onto somebody else's neck, to get them to behave a certain way. And yeah, so I'm probably not going to listen to the conversation, Zorn, but thanks for sharing that. What'd you throw up there, Hobo?
It's some quote. I don't know the Alvaro Koplovic. A man without a government is like a fish without a bicycle. And then someone else goes, more like a fish without a fisherman. And I just thought it was on cue with what you were saying.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. That's a good quote. I'm not familiar with that guy.
I've never heard it till today, and I was like, wow. And then you were saying basically the same scenario, and I was like, this is setting a good tone.
Yeah. That's fantastic. A man without government is like a fish without a fisherman. That is. Yeah.
That's what we need.
That is what we need. And I don't know. I mean, it feels like statism had a good week. And I'm not talking about the, the Bitcoin price dipping or, the Biden regime. I'm talking about, this like 2000 Mules video that came out. And, to a certain degree, like, there's a way to approach it that like helps people to see how ridiculous all of this is. But, there's all this attention and energy being into bringing people back into the system. And like, I watched that documentary on Saturday. I kind of wasted my time with it. And, what's just apparent is that there's very, very, Zorn says, Wake Up Podcast with Knut Svanholm. The Alex Svetsky podcast was a better use of time. That's a good one. I genuinely enjoy that one. I haven't listened to it for a while, but yeah, this 2000 Meals documentary is like, there's a very, clear, example of the system getting rigged. And like, we know that the system is rigged. We know that the democracy is bullshit. We know that the way that markets work in a totalitarian command control economy like we have, and every country in the world has to some degree, unless they're completely dysfunctional and ran by, violent gangs, which is not really a free market, which we talk about on the show. But like, people are like, I can't let go of this corrupt, broken, totally defunct system that is rigged for a system that might also be rigged. And the reality is, the future where we're going into a truly free market economy as a result of Bitcoin is it's not rigged in the same way. There's going to be ways that people can rig it, but there's going to be real consequences for the bullshit. And that's the thing at the end of the day is like, we're sitting here and, you see people who, like, tweet at the SEC all the time. Like, what are you doing about this shitcoin scam? And, it's just a reality. Like, that's the consequence of the system that we live in right now, is you're waiting around for the guys that are captured and have rigged the markets to correct it and to hold people accountable. And that's bullshit. What happens in a real free market economy is if you come out with a scam, it's going to be seen as a misallocation of capital and it's going to fail, and these people are going to be.
Is that what happened in 2008 though?
Go on.
It was rigged then. They bailed them out. That's the thing. We've been bailing them out for way too long.
Yep.
It's been rigged for so long. It's crazy.
Well, you know, and that's the point. Like, following 2008, what was the solution that we had? Well, the solution was to beg the government essentially to hold these people accountable. And they didn't, you know, because the government's complicit in all the bullshit. They love the Fed. The Fed gives them life. With Bitcoin, we have a different solution where you can't get away with that stuff. You know, that's like one of the big things that's important about hard money is that you can't just print money out of thin air to, you know, bail out the bullshit. And it's not all propelled by debt like we see today, where you could continue to just, you know, prolong these zombie companies. There's no zombie companies operating on a Bitcoin standard. Or at least if there are, for a lot less long. Or yeah. I mean, I think 2,000 Mules is like, it's kind of one of those black pills, you know, if you go out and you watch it. I mean, one of the things that they, you know, focused on was, you know, I think the takeaway from it is that the Republicans in the last election were total cucks and didn't cheat as hard as the Democrats. Like that should be the lesson that people take away from. Not that like somehow, you know, the democracy was subverted or not. This is a really, really dirty game of evil people jockeying for control to be able to rule you. Not, you know, this fair system where, you know, the more 50, you know, slightly more of the population gets what they want versus the minority. So interesting documentary, but I wouldn't go watch it if you want to, but I didn't think it was that great. Bitcoin price is down. Everything's down. Looks like Magoo was right, for the time being. Where we go from here, I don't know. I tweeted out, you know, the Bitcoin price was a lot more difficult for me to watch kind of go down and up in 2019 than it was in today, you know, and part of the reason why is I didn't have the conviction or the knowledge. You know, I'm fine. Like I'm happy when the price, you know, dips to this level. And there really is the consolation is watching the shit coins get wrecked, left and right. And all the stuff we've been saying for a long time about these shit coins, becomes apparent and they could start to unravel. And, yeah, Zorn says, I just keep buying. Yeah. I mean, it's an accumulation game. And like I've said, I think multiple times on this show, or at least in meetups, that the whole Bitcoin is too volatile game is over. That meme is dead, you know, because we watch every other asset price act super volatile, and the dollar's been incredibly volatile in recent times. And we just have to learn to live in a volatile society. And I think, you know, the solution is having like real hard assets in as well as Bitcoin. And I'm not talking about gold and silver. I'm talking about bullets and food and water, you know, and kind of covering your bases, because where we're going, it's rough. And like, you know, I'm pretty I have a lot of conviction in believing that Bitcoin is going to be the money of the future. You know, we're not going back to gold, or at least I hope not, because gold failed so miserably. And the best that we're going to get under a gold standard in the future is, you know, a phony gold standard with, you know, probably a social credit system tied to it. It's not going to look that different other than different than a central bank digital currency. Like, the world is digital. We're not going back to analog. And the choices are either Bitcoin or, you know, slave coin. Oh, Zorn says, I love how Bitcoin Bcash is lower today than when it started. I didn't see that. That's fantastic. just for that, it's a good day. But yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, for a lot of us, this is an amazing accumulation point. You know, if we had gone to 100K and up, we would have never had this opportunity. And so it's a fantastic opportunity to really pounce on accumulating more sats, accumulating cheap mining hardware. You know, because if you have conviction of where this is going, it's just kind of a no-brainer. So yeah. Hobo, you got any thoughts or topics?
I just did my application at McDonald's again, though.
Nice. Have you ever worked at McDonald's?
No. Very large consumption as a child, but never worked there.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of brings up an interesting thought in my mind. You know, we're watching all of these fast food chains and retail stores really ratchet up their wages. And we're watching a lot of small businesses continue to go under. Like, this is a story that kind of like came and went, but it's a continued story that's happening today. A lot of these larger chains like McDonald's, what they've done, you know, over the years is really had this, I think it's called vertical integration, where they take over an entire supply chain. So they own the farms that the fake meat comes in. Zorn says, I worked a drunk shift at Taco Bell. 3 a.m. bar closing sucks. Yeah. Yeah, you probably gotta be drunk to work at Taco Bell. It's a rough place, it seems like, to work. So yeah, I mean, we're watching the wages go up where you get paid fairly good money for an entry-level job at McDonald's. And I would imagine that these smaller businesses, these mom-and-pop restaurants, have a lot harder time competing. And the only thing they can really do is raise their prices, which, as everybody is hurting economically, they're going to start turning to the, you know, shitty chains like that. So it's kind of a compounding issue that we're going to continue to see go forward. But yeah, I've definitely been on the support local train as much as possible. And I think that's a part of just, you know, being a part of this, you know, circular economy and seeking to exit from the system is when you go local, especially with restaurants, they're probably going to have higher quality ingredients than the sludge that they feed you at Taco Bell or McDonald's. And that's beneficial for sure. Yeah, but what we're going to be watching happening in this current turn down is retail's just getting completely rug pulled, which is a bummer to watch. So hopefully everybody out there is gainfully employed and able to accumulate this. Planet asks, if I buy a stable coin that goes to zero, can I start a class action lawsuit against Coinbase for false advertising? I mean, you could probably start a lawsuit, but I doubt it's going to go anywhere. It'd be interesting to see what lawsuits have been launched against Coinbase, because there's probably some pretty substantial stuff that they could get busted for, and security violations and stuff like that. I mean, that's something to, you know, kind of look at and wonder about, is like, are these exchanges eventually going to get left out to dry? Yeah, Zorn says, I can see office space and leases getting hosed. Yeah. It's amazing that commercial real estate hasn't utterly collapsed. We might see residential prices come down quite a bit and have a massive correction there. Heard some interesting stats on that. So I was talking with Ronan Miner this week. One of the things that he's predicting is a lot of these kind of similar lines as Coinbase, but he's saying that a lot of these larger mining companies might go under as a result of this price dip, depending on how long it sustains for. And I think that would be a bit of a consolation in this too. Kind of going back to my previous statements, I don't really know like how great of a support guys like those are from the regulatory standpoint, because they seem to be trumpeting the ESG stuff. Yeah, Vake says every boomer with 1 million home equity are in for a rude awakening. Yeah. Yeah. Don says, I think it could get ugly. Definitely. Well, this is something that, you know, Skeef was saying a while back, is like, just hold off on real estate prices or buying real estate for a while, because at some point it's going to have to come down. It's going to come down hard. And I think that's true. And it's kind of something that's going to be interesting too, is like, you know, is Bitcoin going to track the prices of a lot of these assets as they go down and stay relatively stable against them? That's like a whole different ball game when you start to price things in Bitcoin instead of dollars, and things look incredibly different. So, like, for example, miner prices have been dramatically plummeting in dollars, and they've stayed relatively flat priced in sats, which is kind of interesting. It would be nice, you know, ultimately, though, if Bitcoin kind of trended with energy prices. Kind of going back to my thought on miners. I don't really know. It seems like they have a lot of funding, so I have trouble seeing, you know, what Ronan Miner was saying. Okay. So Don's on the side of Ronan Miner. So Don says, hash rate bear here. When the first public company files bankruptcy, where's the hash rate? I mean, I think, you know, the hash rate bull argument, which I've tended to side with, is it's not like I'm rooting for the hash rate to go up, because that means that I'm making less sats as the difficulty adjusts. Like, if anything, I want the difficulty to go down, and it's amazing. It's going to be interesting to see what the Bitcoin price does over the next couple of weeks. If it continues to either go down or stay stable like this, it's going to put a lot of pressure on a lot of people, and they're probably not going to, because energy prices aren't going down, so their expenses aren't going down in the slightest, and all the equipment outside of, you know, the actual ASICs themselves are going up in price. PDUs, electrical equipment, electrician labor costs to deploy these things is going up, or just becoming more scarce in general. So, yeah, I don't know. What's your guess, Don? Throw your guess in there. I'm still under the belief that hash rate's going to go up. And that's just based on how much equipment has been deployed in recent months. Like, there's a lot of people that have spent a lot of money getting this stuff ready. There's a lot of pre-orders on new equipment. It's going to get deployed. Yeah, Don says, I don't know, a lot of them will go get bankrupt, but they'll go refinance higher and higher rates and be okay if they want to have Bitcoin on the balance sheet, or if they have Bitcoin on the balance sheet. Yeah, and that's the thing, is like, they have access to so much money, so it's going to take time. Like, if that's your thesis and you believe that that's going to happen, that these big mining companies are going to go under, it's probably not going to be in the next year. Yeah, he says, I think hash rate stays low for a while because the cost of dollars is so high. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, there's going to be ultimately a divergence in this energy narrative. Like, the U.S. and the European Union are driving this idea that we need to get to carbon neutral or whatever. And I think that's going to fall flat on its face. And there's going to be other jurisdictions that completely ignore that and seek for other ways to generate as much energy as possible. You know, India is one of those countries that seems to be doing that, as they are not, don't really seem to be buying into this solar, wind bullshit, and are pretty bullish nuclear, and they're a pretty big country that could be eventually deploying ASICs, because that's what's going to inevitably happen. Is everybody, all the miners are going to rush to that jurisdiction that is mostly friendly. And I have trouble seeing southern U.S. really playing along with this for much longer. I'm bullish on states like Oklahoma for sure. Don, get in spaces. I want to hear your thoughts. Yeah, I mean, I really hope that, you know, your theory is correct. It's just it's hard for me to see it come into play because there's just so much equipment getting canceled. I think like one of the big ones is like one of the big catalysts for this is like what's going to happen with this new gen of miners, the M50 and S19 Hydro, the S19 XP. You know, Bitmain might not be able to deliver on these, or they might just not get as much demand as they did with the S19s. And if those don't get deployed at the same rate that S19s did, of course, you know, hash rate will not continue to climb and the difficulty won't. And there's some thought as to why that could be a possibility because, you know, the L7, and I know it's a shitcoin miner, but the L7 had a lot of issues shipping. And people are still waiting on their pre-orders from like last November on that. And that was like the last big ASIC that Bitmain put out. And I don't see like, you know, when everybody asks about Intel and, you know, other people getting into the space, and I just really have trouble seeing them actually doing anything. Okay. All right, Don. Don says he can't hop in the spaces tonight because he's at a high school softball game. Should we be concerned about Don being at a high school softball game? So yeah. I mean, there's a lot of like maybes in this market. Like one of the things that gets me excited about Intel getting in the space is just more competition because Bitmain does a lot of really stupid things. MicroBT just doesn't create as much as they can. This space could be so much better. There's so many stupid things that these ASIC companies do. And the way that they produce ASICs, that would be nice for them not to do, and for there to be more equipment and choices, because like realistically, the only choices are between two companies, which some people essentially argue are the same company. They're essentially a cartel on the space, and all the alternatives, there are alternatives. There's a bunch of alternatives. If you're walking around Bitcoin, the Bitcoin conference in Miami a couple months ago, there was a bunch of different ASIC suppliers out there. And, you know, the reason why nobody buys them is because they're probably pieces of shit. And they break, you know, and the good ones break. You know, you get problems with Bitmain stuff at a much higher rate than the MicroBT stuff. But there is a failure rate, and it's something you have to, it's a major pain in the ass to deal with if you're a miner. But if you're buying like the off-brand ASICs, then you're probably going to deal with a much higher failure rate, and it's going to be a major pain in the ass. So if that's my long tangent to say, like, Don, you could totally be right about hash rate if Bitmain fails to deliver on these new gen ASICs. But even still, I still see hash rate staying stable, or probably more on the side of going up as a result of the S19s that just continue to get deployed. Like, I know people that are sitting on fairly large quantities of S19s that just don't have the quantity or have the infrastructure to deploy it yet. They're waiting on electricians. They're waiting on transformers. They're waiting on all of this stuff. So yeah. Don says family member senior night. Well, maybe the family. Yeah. But like, kind of going on the, my last little stint on Bitcoin mining is like, this market's hard and you got to be a complete masochist to be involved in it. You got to be willing to deal with a lot of pain and a lot of headaches. And like, even if you're mining at home, you got to be pretty industrious and ready to deal with stuff and troubleshoot on a regular basis. So get ready for a headache. And the people that are in the space are complete maniacs, and they're going to get, be ready to go to the ends of the earth to do that. So that's something to be bullish on, is Bitcoin miners. It really are the modern day. It's the modern day gold rush. These people are like 49ers digging, going off in the wilderness, digging and sifting for Bitcoin in the rivers. But yeah. All right, I'm kind of out of topics. Max, you want to hop up here, or Hobo, you got anything?
I just like listening to you guys, though. Sorry, brother.
Cool. Thanks for being here. Do I think the XPs end up shipping on time or no? Okay. Platted's got a new topic. Do I think the XPs will ship on time or no? I don't know. I mean, I personally haven't seen one yet. I know that MicroBT is shipping the M50 already, and not at any meaningful scale, but we're about to get our hands on it. And we ended up, okay. I got to finish this thought before I start reading other questions. So, I mean, I don't know. If we're going to go based off the L7, I don't think there's any way that the XPs are going to ship on time. And I definitely subscribe to the conspiracy theory that Bitmain mines with the S9, or, whatever machine that they have, until it's more profitable to sell it. And so that's kind of the question there, is like, is it going to be more profitable for Bitmain to mine with these new gen machines that kind of, shoot the last gen or the prior gens out of the water? I mean, maybe it might be a while where they'll be able to do that, because they probably already have the infrastructure set up. So I mean, it'll probably be a slow rollout. On time, probably not, because Bitmain doesn't really ever seem to ship on time. But how late, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on an XP and playing around with it. But if, the one thing I would say is, like, if you're trying to pre-order them right now, it's a bad idea. It makes absolutely no sense, especially when you can get, S19s. Like, once they start rolling out, there's going to be a massive premium on them, and you can get S19s for a fairly cheap price, and they're so hackable. You can do all sorts of crazy things with them to overclock them, to make them semi-comparable. They're never going to be as efficient, but, like, if you're really worried about that hash rate, you dunk it in immersion, you can do some crazy shit. And it's going to take a while for the XPs to have firmware support and for people to figure out all the ways to hack them. and Bitmain just makes it incredibly difficult to do that. What's that, Max?
So, conspiracy theory. What I thought that was just common knowledge.
That Bitmain mines with their own machines.
Yeah, I mean, you're crazy if you think it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm here setting up a brooder with Ephesians for the chicks.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if you can hear the little cheep.
I can. You got any thoughts? You got any thoughts on the chicken genocide happening right now?
Half the reason we're doing this.
Yeah. That's half the reason we're doing this. Really. I mean, what was it, like 20 food processing plants in like 2 weeks? Like, yeah, and I see people being like, "Shut up, that's not abnormal." Like, yeah, okay, all right, sure. I'm definitely going to entertain this person with my time.
Yeah, it was like 18 in 2 months, and like.
Okay, well, that's a little longer, but still, that's like crazy. Like, if you said that in 5 years, it'd be like, oh, okay, that's kind of an issue. But like in 2 months, get out of town.
Yeah, that's something that's wild going on. Yeah, I mean, maximum pain for maximum compliance. That's what I think they're doing right now, for sure.
Yep.
And this is another reason of, like, you know, why I think it's so beneficial to just secede from this society, you know, on a personal level. Is like, what's the point of subjecting yourself to all the stress and bullshit? Like, what you guys are doing right now and setting up a brooder for chickens is probably one of the most productive things that you could be doing right now. Way more productive than watching 2,000 meals like I wasted my time doing, you know, learning about like the bullshit elections or, you know, watching.
Okay, what was that all about? Because some lady that I somewhat know was talking about that, and she's like some QAnon lady. And then I saw on Twitter or something, it was like, Zuckerberg buys 2,000 mules to change election. Elon buys Twitter for free speech or something like that. But yeah, what's this all about?
Yeah, so essentially, you know, the summary of the movie was that there was like one firm that this guy Dinesh D'Souza worked with to gather a bunch of like video evidence of people mailing ballots. So what they would do is they'd go collect ballots from a bunch of people and then get paid to stuff it in ballot boxes. And so like these people would go and not all at once, but they would go to a bunch of different ballot boxes with a bunch of people's mail-in ballots and stuff hundreds of these. And so they estimated that these people, you know, in various states across the country stuffed, you know, potentially up to like 1 million ballots. And I don't know if they, you know, were necessarily, you know, forging the ballots. Like, there were like real people's ballots that they would go collect and do it. But they're
real. They're just not alive anymore.
No, I mean, I think a lot of them were. I mean, they would go to like elderly homes. I'm sure like there was a lot of people that weren't alive doing it, but you know, like what I was talking about earlier is it's just like they all cheat. You know, the Republicans cheat, the Democrats cheat. You know, the lesson to take away from this is that the Republicans just really sucked at cheating this last election, and that was probably done on purpose. I don't think it was like I really do think that they kind of pre-plan and preordain what's going to happen in the future. And it's a big act. And even if it wasn't, you know, it's like people are like bickering and doing all of this stuff as a result of, you know, trying to battle who's going to be your ruler. Like they put all this energy into figuring out who's essentially going to steal and coerce them over the next 4 years. It's going to be my guy. No, it's going to be your guy. And so it's kind of a waste of energy and time. But
What was that? The H.L. Mencken quote was, "You're no less a slave. You get to choose your ruler for a period of 4 years." I think that was H.L. Mencken.
That's a pretty good one.
He has a book called Notes on Democracy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly like Hans Hoppe. He says like the only difference between, democracy and, monarchy or dictatorship of sorts is that, there's more equal access to government, but it doesn't mean that, the government is any less tyrannical or better serving to you as an individual.
I don't know if I might disagree with that a little bit. And I actually don't know if that's actually Hans Hermann Hoppe's position overall, because it does mimic private property better because they have a longer time horizon. With democracy, it just totally fucks up the time preference, as we've seen. At least with monarchy, there's a semblance of like, okay, well, I don't want to absolutely screw this up for my posterity because it's hereditary, which I understand. Like, okay, hereditary, like someone was born in the royal family, do they actually deserve it? So maybe we should vote on people. But turns out that if you think about it, it actually is closer to private property because it's like inheritance. Not saying that it's preferable to something else, but I think it's preferable to democracy. At least people like Curtis Yarvin or AKA Mencius Moblug have made that point. He's actually a monarchist, so he actually he used to be a libertarian. Now he's a monarchist. I don't consider myself a monarchist, but definitely preferable to democracy.
Yeah, no, that's Hoppe's point. What I was saying was essentially like, you or I probably wouldn't be able to get into some sort of form of rulership over others in a monarchy or another form of government, whereas you or I could run for a political opinion and then enter into the ruling class. Like that's his differentiation between democracy and monarchy, or one of his differentiations. But yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
Well, that's assuming that like your run-of-the-mill politician is actually the one ruling.
Yep. Yeah. No, they're definitely not, but you can be lazy, sit on your ass, collecting blood money. But yeah. Monarchy and every man is king. Yeah.
There was one, I don't know a whole lot about her, but there was some chick on Svetsky's podcast a while back. She's like a Randian, but they kind of talked about this thing she calls royalism. And they talked about Curtis Yarvin a bit, Hans Hermann Hoppe, kind of like libertarian-ish stuff, but kind of like, they talk about the patchwork model a lot. I can't remember her name. Maybe someone else remembers her name. I thought it was pretty interesting. She called it royalism rather than like monarchism because it's slightly different. But, even though anarchy is the ideal, I think the patchwork model may be coming back and maybe incarnated.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely preferable to democracy. I think at this point, it's pretty apparent to people that most things are preferable to democracy. But yeah, Don's asking, was it Jane something?
Oh yeah, it's Jane something. Yeah, Jane. Did he say his last name?
No.
Or her last name?
No, he just said Jane something.
Yeah. It's Jane. I remember. Yeah.
I want to circle back. So Don asked a question: do I think that hash price needs to go up from here in order for hash rate to go up? And my answer in the short term is no, just because I don't think as long as it's dollar profitable, I think that's how they're able to get access to money. It seems like more money is becoming available for people to buy equipment, and just from what I've been seeing, even for small people, there's more lenders getting out there willing to hop in the Bitcoin mining game. And I guess that's one of the consolations of the big companies. So I don't think in the short term that the hash price needs to go up. as long as they're able to present like these are the numbers of what we're going to be able to rake in. So
is this part of your maximum pain theory? That was pretty funny. Like more people get access to credit, but then again, the credit's drying up because they raise rates. But maybe they lower rates again, and then somehow the Bitcoin price doesn't pump as quick as more people get access to capital. I don't know. It seems a little unlikely, but I thought it was funny.
yeah. So Max asked in a tweet earlier, what's your maximum pain? I said Bitcoin price at 20,000 with network hash rate at 300 exahash. That's my maximum pain point. Probably have to get higher at that point. I don't know what the profitability on my S19 would be, but even if it's mining at a negative, I would still mine with it for a little bit. So okay. So Pledit brings up, I guess we had to talk about this. So Novogratz shilled Terra stablecoin scam hard in Miami. I've got one little soundbite in response to Novogratz.
You're going to hell, buddy, and you're going to burn for eternity because you're a crackhead.
Yeah, this Terra stablecoin thing is kind of fun to watch fall apart, especially since he got a tattoo. That guy's such a clown. Do you guys in Spaces know anything about this coin?
I've literally never heard of it. This is some stable coin that Novogratz is pushing.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Is that the one that was people were talking about on Twitter today? They like sold their Bitcoin holdings to rebalance or something?
I think so, yeah.
Looks like you're fucked.
I'd neck. That's hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, this is like a thing, the response is like, we don't need stable coins. We just don't need stable coins whatsoever. It's like Bitcoin is the money. And, if you're going to use dollars. But I don't really get why there was this big pump recently into stable coins. And like, I guess like people's, the stable coins depegged. Yeah, I mean, like these algorithmically secured stable coins, like I think DAI was the big one a while back that, is essentially similar to Ethereum. I mean, it's like essentially what they're trying to, do is just like find a roundabout way to be a bank and be able to print money in the same way that banks can print debt, I think, without having a banking charter. And I don't really get the point. When you can solve the solutions with Bitcoin, like, just like it's more risky fiat currency, and fiat currency is already incredibly risky, and it's not a real solution. Like, I get why people in other countries, see the utility in stable coins because they don't have to deal with wire transfers to the same extent. But Bitcoin solves all these solutions. Like, and I think it's the same answer, for people all over the world is like, the reality is you have to exit this system in one way or another. Like, if the system isn't serving you, then trying to like compound on the system is not going to be the answer. The answer is to build a different system and exit it. And it's like, you can send a lightning payment to somebody for free. That lightning payment's probably that Bitcoin is probably gonna retain its value against your fiat currency a lot better and do a lot better for you. If you don't have access to all of these different, complicated assets like we do in the Western world, and you want a mechanism for saving that isn't, hard assets, then, Bitcoin is the solution in that regard. And it was like, okay, today it's down, to 30,000, but, it's kind of a time game. we look at it over time. It's just like a no-brainer. And so the stable coins are just stupid. Yeah, they're ridiculous and gay. Yeah. Totally agree. But yeah, I mean, that it really is the benefit. Like, you know, this has to happen. The volatility needs to happen to Bitcoin to kind of clear out all the bullshit. And the people that actually like are doing things that are noteworthy, you know, they're going to feel pain, but they're going to trudge on. And the people that are just building things out of vapor are going to get completely wrecked. And that's, you know, one of the benefits of it. And it's a good time to have fun and, you know, clown on these guys. But yeah. I ran out of topics. You got anything, Max? Max is busy with the chickens. We don't need the stable coins to transition. You know, that's like a dumb argument. It's like saying we need central bank digital currencies to transition to Bitcoin.
Chickens are my stable coin.
Yeah. You know, I had the opportunity, I went to a Joe Jorgensen campaign rally in 2020 when she was running for president. And
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. She was the libertarian candidate.
Oh, yeah. No, I actually voted for her as cringy as her campaign was, and as much as they did not deserve it, I was like, and as cringy as the Libertarian Party is, largely. Besides, you know, like the Mises Caucus people and, you know, maybe even some of the Mises Caucus people are a little cringy, but, yeah, I think yeah, no, I still wanted them to get like 5% to see if anything from that would happen, but whatever. Anyway, you were going to go to her campaign rally somewhere?
Well, I did go to her rally and I asked her about inflation and I asked her about, you know, legal tender laws and the Federal Reserve. And it was funny because that was her response. She said that she believes in the abolition of legal tender laws, and if people want to use chickens as currency, go ahead.
I mean, Dave Smith put it pretty aptly. He's like, yeah, she ran a campaign that would have been decent in like the 90s, but she just doesn't understand the moment in which we're living, or like not even moment doesn't classify the era in which we're living. She just it doesn't click in her brain, I guess, or she was like too scared to actually just be like, no, this is the moment we're living in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, and I tend to like, so like Ben Stone in his book, Sedition, Subversion, Sabotage, which I would highly encourage reading, definitely my best read in the last couple of years, you know, talks about this, it's just libertarian politics in general, of like how great of a allocation of resources is it, you know, and he talks about Ron Paul specifically. Would it have been more beneficial to give the Ron Paul campaign money, or to really, you know, put this money into things, you know, for example, like Bitcoin development, you know, things that are really going to, you know, render the state powerless in the long run. Like, I mean, I even think that like buying something from Start9 Labs or a company, you know, equivalent to them is more productive than voting or engaging in the politics, in the long run. So
I'd say Ron Paul's 2012 campaign was arguably the last useful libertarian campaign, because I mean, how many Bitcoiners now exist? And I'm not talking like cucked Bitcoiners, like hardcore Bitcoin maxis that are like, no, fuck the state, we're doing this for real, because of the Ron Paul campaign. I mean, like that kind of facilitated my journey down the rabbit hole for sure.
Yeah.
So like, even though he didn't win, like I still consider Ron Paul a winner.
Yeah, I'm personally a big fan of Ron Paul, and I like a lot of these guys in libertarian politics. I enjoy Dave Smith. I enjoy a lot of these people, and I'm on the periphery of, you know, the Arizona Libertarian, like the Mises Caucus and the movement. But Zorn says I've not regretted my Start9 Labs purchase. So, like, one of the things that, is kind of the question is, was Ron Paul creating a market, or was he a response to a market? And I tend to think he was a response to the market. His whole and the Fed had a lot of legs because of just how insane the Fed policy is, and people being able to see the results of the 2008 financial crisis. Like in 2008, the best-selling book in the world was The Road to Serfdom by Friedrich Hayek, talking about why central planning is so doomed to fail. And there's a market that's created by these things. And so that's kind of when I bring up the
Good point. You said the Fatal Conceit or Road to Serfdom?
Road to
Fatal
Serfdom.
Conceit? Oh, Road to Serfdom. Okay. Yeah. Fatal Conceit's along the same lines.
Yeah. So
the fatal conceit of men is that they can plan, do these grand planning projects without having skin in the game or, connection to what they're actually affecting.
Yeah.
I mean, we can do grand projects, sure, like cathedrals, but we need sound money and sound everything to have a long time horizon or low time preference so that we can be a part of a project that is going to last longer than our lifetime.
Yeah. And so I kind of bring this up because I have a lot of experience interacting with that community and seeing the politics and, what they're trying to implement. A lot of it, being fairly noble. There's some, if you hang out with the Mises Caucus people, there's some of the most based people out there. And a lot of them, are starting to get Bitcoin for the first time. But if you go back and you watch Guy Swan's episode with Dave Smith, which I thought was really good, Guy brings up the point is would you rather have a bunch of people sitting at I'm going to misquote him, but I'm just going to try it. I'm not going to try and quote him, but Guy, is talking about you can give people opportunity in educating them on Bitcoin to leave your campaign rally and actively disengage from the Federal Reserve. This is the opportunity that you have. Oh, Zorn likes the
chickens. A lot of the libertarian masturbation isn't and I've been there. I totally get it. Arguably it go back and forth, and some days I'm still there a little bit. But it's not actionable a lot of time. And it's well, I mean, you could be the most base person in the gulag, but you're still in the gulag.
Yeah. And that's the point. So just from a tactical standpoint if just looking at what's a better use of resources, spending all this time in this political activity or actively looking to disengage and secede from this coercive state. And, regardless of what, this is just from my personal philosophy and why I've disengaged from the politics is because I believe it's a better allocation of resources on my end to spend a lot of time in the Bitcoin meetups, and try and get this infrastructure out. I talk with people every week for hours about Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin in general to see, how do we get this technology into the right people's hands, people that really are looking to use this tool to end coercion as much as possible. And to that extent, I will hang out and talk with these people in this political field. But just the act of thinking that something's going to change. A lot of them are really tied to this idea of they want to recreate what happened in 2012 with Ron Paul. And I just struggle to see it happening to that degree, or from Bitcoin is it's that, but times 1,000, because we're really moving here. We're moving incredibly quickly and disrupting things to the point where they're in the then you fight you stage. They're ready to start putting people in jail cells and murking people because they feel like they're getting out of control. And I think that's a good position that we're in, being in that position versus, the Libertarian Party is just not taken seriously by anybody. And there's a reason for that. I'm pretty sure Ron Paul ran as a Republican in 2012, correct? well, regardless, like, I'm really grateful for Ron Paul. I've been a long time watcher of his show, The Liberty Report. He's got a lot of really good guests on there, a lot of good stuff. And like, I don't want to like tarnish and trash a lot of these people in this community because they're our allies to an extent. And I might disagree with their tactics, but I'm not gonna, yeah. But like,
Hey, I don't know if any of you guys have seen him, but I'll shout out Shane Hazel because he's like a libertarian guy in the Libertarian Party. He used to be a Marine, and he has, the whole hashtag Bitcoin in his. I know that's not like just because someone has hashtag Bitcoin doesn't mean you can trust him. But he's been in spaces, and I've gone back and forth with him a bit, and he has plans to get involved. I don't know how knowledgeable about Bitcoin he is, but I don't think he's going to end up shitcoining. He seems to understand why we're doing this. So he's one of the Mises Caucus guys. I don't know if he's actually in the Mises Caucus, but he's one of the more based libertarians that isn't cringy, and he's getting involved with Bitcoin. So Shane Hazel, I think he's a real one.
Yeah, well, that's cool, man. I definitely want to support people like that, because they have a platform. And like what the Mises Caucus has done effectively is they've created this movement of individuals all over the place, around the country, similar to the Bitcoin meetup scene, that we can go and like interact with. And a lot of those people are like really good resources if you want to start building an agorist economy, if you just want to like intellectually masturbate with somebody on Rothbard or other libertarian thinkers, like, which is genuinely a good time. It's like, a big part of, like what we enjoy doing with Bitcoin too. So my whole thinking though is like, I'm not going to be a delegate to go vote at their state conference or their nationwide conference to try and pick, so, I mean, even if you had like Ron Paul 2.0, which I'm not really convinced that Dave Smith is, but, even though Dave is a cool dude, I just don't know how great of a use of resources that would be, putting all this energy behind him. Or, because like Giacomo Zucco talked about this in Wartime Bitcoin, is like the problem with going into the system is that it is a system built to corrupt you. And that's probably what's going to happen to, most of these libertarian politicians. It's, at the end of the day, they're going to have to compromise, or they'll just be irrelevant. And like, I think people underestimate how just evil and how much of a quagmire even local politics is. And like, one of the things too is like, you're competing with a billion lemmings, and like, there's not that many people that are, based, but like just on the merit alone of like, why are we giving the system any more attention than it needs or any legitimacy? Like every time you go and you vote, it's giving it legitimacy, like revoking your consent, and doing it blatantly and giving others permission, explaining to them that there's a possibility to revoke your consent. Like that is powerful. Roping people back into the system over and over again, because this is like the fatal flaw. Like we can't, I don't think that we can afford to continue on this direction. Like it's just not, like the state is too evil of an institution to be allowed to exist. And like the solution. Oh, go ahead.
That actually reminds me of a point where you said they're going to have to compromise. And there's this funny point when that people make in like the corporate press and associated spaces that there's gridlock, and the Democrats and the Republicans they're too absolute and they won't compromise. It's like, nah, dude, like they compromise and they're compromised. It's not that they don't compromise; it's that they're publicly vitriolic within a very small window. So it looks as if they're very staunch, but it's a show. All the world is a stage.
Yep. Totally agree. They agree on all the wrong things at the end of the day. Like the Republicans are just the progressives driving the speed limit. And I get it's more pleasant to live in jurisdictions where the speed limit is being driven by the politicians, but it's still not a great solution to anything.
It's a losing strategy.
Yep.
Quote by Michael Malice. By the way, Malice for some reason has me blocked. Unfortunately, he was one of my more favorite Twitter follows. maybe it was maybe I was pushing Bitcoin or something. I don't know. He's actually friends with Bitstein, with Michael Goldstein. But yet he doesn't talk about Bitcoin that much. I understand, like, if someone doesn't know about Bitcoin that much, they don't want to talk about it. But like, is he scared? Like, Michael Malice doesn't strike me as someone who's like scared of things like that, or like, oh, like this is not like how everyone caveats this is not financial advice. It's like, well, what are you scared of? Like, stop cucking to that thing. Like, I understand you don't want to scam people, you don't want to mislead people, but I feel like a lot of people say that, and they're covering their own ass, which I understand, but it comes off really, really cucky.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Malice is definitely an interesting guy, and to be honest, I would prefer him over Dennis Porter any day.
Oh, absolutely.
And like Dennis
Porter, that's a good question.
And I just want to, I want to preface that because like a lot of the things that Dennis Porter suggests is an attack on Bitcoin. I think the whole like we need to lobby our politicians for Bitcoin is an attack on Bitcoin because you're not entering into a good faith argument. You're entering into the arena with pedophiles, like bending the knee to them and, trying to suck their dick. People that genuinely hate you or could care less whether you live or not and don't want to see you succeed. And so I'd say that. So Malice lives in kind of an interesting, arena where he's going out and, effectively talking with normies, which, I don't, really know how productive is because I feel like bolstering the remnant is the way to go. Going and finding people in the weeds that don't agree with the system and empowering them to, survive what's coming and thrive in it and be, the new dominant individuals in the new society that forms to compete with, the bullshit is more the route that I think is beneficial. But, yeah, I mean, he's an interesting guy. I don't really know what his thoughts are in Bitcoin. Like he tends to he doesn't say Bitcoin. He references crypto. And I think
what Malice does.
Yeah.
Oh, what's going on? Yikes.
So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, it's pretty rare for people to really like put out what they genuinely think as far as like content creation. I think people's personal convictions are different than what they portray. And it's very, very clear in the content creation world why that's a thing is because you get incentivized to fall into a narrative. And so from like a money standpoint, he makes a ton of money off of his content. What is he? He's an anarchist political commentator, and he's funny and he's good at it, but he's a political commentator. That's what he's doing is he's like drawing attention to the system that we're trying to, to leave from. And, he's a part of it to a certain degree. So I don't know. It's hard to really like look at people like that and try and like, what's the word? Like assume their motivations, and like, but what's clear about his content and the stuff that he does is that a lot of normies like his stuff and they like his stuff because he's funny. One thing that I'll guarantee is that a lot of normies don't really like this content. And that's kind of intentional. That's something that Skeef and I have tried to do throughout this show is like make it intolerable for normies. Like that they just get like offended or not attracted to things that we talk about, or they're just like so out there because we're not trying to reach the normies. And there's a lot of content that's out there. There's a lot of really good, hardcore anarchist content that is just not that popular or that circulated. Like, and it might be in the future. But yeah. Zorn says, I want to listen to Max Payne, but all I can hear is the hot chicks. WTF do I do to fit in here?
You want to hear the chicks?
Yeah. Play Zorn the chicks.
You hear them?
Yep. It's a beautiful sound.
It's great.
Yeah.
Have you ever had duck eggs?
I've heard they're pretty good. I don't know if I've had duck eggs.
Can confirm. They are good.
Yeah,
little bit tougher shell, harder to crack. Larger yolk. Pretty dope.
Yeah. Yeah, Julia Terinsky really likes ducks because they're kind of like guard dogs for the chickens.
But you said Julia Turansky. Is she the blonde, like the Eastern European or Russian blonde?
Yeah, no, she likes
anarchy chick.
Yeah, I was talking about geese. She likes geese. But yeah, she's pretty awesome. But I think she likes ducks too.
Man, I haven't seen any stuff by her in a few years. But yeah, she's pretty dope.
Yeah.
What's she doing now?
She's
same thing.
She's off all social media. I keep in touch with her. Her stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, hit me up in the DMs if you want to keep track of her stuff. But yeah,
is she in Canada?
No, she's in the U.S.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I'm a fan of Malice. I find him super entertaining, and I'll watch all of his stuff before I watch Dennis Porter's, and but I just don't think that's the winning strategy. Is casting this wide net to try and be tolerable to everybody, but even still, like I think if you guys get a chance, check out Ben Stone's content, badquaker.org. He's got all of his podcasts on there, written some really good stuff, done some good talks. That guy's fire. Shane from Liberty Under Attack, he was on this show a while back. He's really good. Stuff like that, I think, is, looking for those content creators where you can really like exit the system and it's like a full detox instead of just dealing with this stuff that just continues to feed you back into the bullshit. But yeah, it's definitely a different model. But yeah, I mean, I think like, when Skeef and I started the show, like we had this idea of like, we're not going to like try too terribly hard to grow the audience. Like we're going to hang out with our friends, and talk about this shit that matters. And I think that's, kind of an attractive approach. 'Cause we get to talk about all the crazy shit that we want to, but yeah, I'm trying to forget. One thing that Malice has talked about, which would be pretty entertaining, like when you're looking at the current system, it is pretty funny to watch it kind of burn to the ground. Like I've had a lot of fun watching Lauren Bobart and Marjorie Taylor Greene, because like one of the things you're talking about, Max, earlier is like they have the fake like anger towards each other, like Chuck Schumer versus Mitch McConnell. Like that's just all stage bullshit. All the stuff with AOC, like you're just mad because you can't date me, all that shit is staged. But Lauren Bobart and Marjorie Taylor Greene genuinely piss these people off, and they genuinely really get under their skin and make them squirm. And you know that these people, not like, I'm not really advocating as like, you know, being fans of them because they're diehard status, but they are pretty entertaining to watch. Like when
They are entertaining.
when they're refusing to wear a mask and running around metal detectors because they want to carry their guns onto the house floor, that's pretty based. But yeah. Well, let's see. Should I do my sponsors for tonight? I was going to try something new. All right, I'll do my sponsors. Tonight's episode of Toxic Airwaves is brought to you by Plan B Stock to Flow. Stock to Flow is a model that, you know, hasn't looked too promising recently, but it's still in play. With some adjustments, it will come true. Bitcoin price is going up, and it's going to go up dramatically. So inject your veins with some hopium. Another sponsor of the show is Physical Bitcoin Art's suspended Twitter account. Now, and this is not a sponsorship of Physical Bitcoin Art's actual, you know, art, but it's a sponsorship of his suspended Twitter account. He wanted everybody to let me let you know that his Twitter account will be back eventually. It's just currently suspended. And finally, the last sponsor of our show is Dirtbags Bar in Tucson, Arizona, which is the Garden of Eden. It is the best place to meet your future ex-wife. Skeef is currently not here right now because he is at Dirtbags Bar getting wasted, looking for that lucky lady of the future that will eventually run away with half of his Bitcoin and get him diagnosed with climate change. That's all our sponsors for tonight. Alrighty. I was going to keep the show kind of short tonight. I am flying out to Nashville. I'm pretty stoked. They have a Bitcoin mining meetup out there. Bummed I'm going to be missing the Phoenix meetup in Scottsdale this week. But yeah. You guys, anybody have any topics before I close? Or should I just close? Cool. Alrighty, well, thank you for everybody in the chat for showing up. Thanks, Zorn. Ride or die. Keep it rolling. If you're not bullish right now, I don't know what the fuck is wrong with you. You must be listening to too many chart boys and stupid shit. Like, we're rolling, and things are getting wild. The stuff that's happening right now is so insanely crazy and so insanely bullish. We're really entering the then you fight you stage. Like, they're really getting ramped up, and that is something super, super exciting. Like, if you thought this was going to be an easy battle to take down the Federal Reserve and to take down, you know, some of the most evil people in human history, got some waking up to do. So get ready, get prepared. Thanks for tuning in to the show, and have a good one.